Dear friends, Thomas the Tank Engine is a silly shunter who wants to see the world. Beyond the big station, of course, and would do anything to get the chance. Unfortunately for the fat director, Thomas will be very silly indeed. Sincerely, the author. Thomas's Signal, written by BrightonTerrier. Poor Thomas the Tank Engine was worn out. He puffed wearily home after being dragged along by Gordon. The fat director apologized to him.
We should have checked the coupling first, but I hope this has taught you not to be late with the coaches. You're not meant to be on the main line.
Yes, sir, I know, sir, said Thomas. Edward spoke kindly to him. I could never go that fast. I'm sure after that you'll want to stick to your shunting. Shunting gets boring, said Thomas cheekily. I didn't get to see the line outside the station. It was all a blur. I want to see what's out there properly. I'm sure you will someday, Edward smiled. But what would happen to the trains without you? Thomas knew his friend was right. But he still dreamed of leaving the yard. The little engine would sit glaring at the signals on the gantry all day. They would go up and down, declaring to the big engines they were free to run down the line. They'd whistle and wheesh at Thomas, as if to say, "Off I go! Ha ha ha! Off I go! Ha ha ha!" Signals on the gantry usually never applied to Thomas. He had his own special shunting signals. One might think this would make him feel special. It didn't. An important engine like me should be allowed to use gantry signals. I know what I'm doing. One day, Thomas noticed men with tools and ladders were working on the gantry. He watched them intently and was delighted to see what it was. A new signal for me, he whistled. On the gantry, no less. He was very pleased and was soon told what it was for. The signal allows you to go further up the line to collect trucks and coaches from the sidings, his driver explained. Thomas understood and was very pleased whenever he got to visit the sidings. He felt very proud of them and would always give a whistle to the signal box nearby. But he would still watch as the big engines passed by, going further afield. Before long, Thomas was coming up with a plan to go beyond the sidings, without it seeming his fault. He tried to sidle past the sidings, but his driver checked him. He tried to hide behind one of the big engines as they were leaving, but the signalman caught him. He tried all sorts of tricks, but the men always caught him, and so Thomas decided. They won't let me go, then I'll go without them, and he did. It was early in the morning. He had been given the green signal for the sidings. When the firemen uncoupled the trucks, this was his chance. Shaking his driver from the footplate, Thomas quickly steamed away. The signalman saw his crew chasing after him and set the signals. But Thomas just laughed. He carried on and passed them on into the tunnel, feeling very clever indeed. The little engine was enjoying himself enormously as he took in all the new scenery beyond the yards. But he didn't feel so clever when he arrived at the next station to find the inspector, the fat director, and a bigger engine waiting for him. Oh dear, Thomas thought, now I'm in for it. The inspector jumped into his cab and brought him to a stop. I did not suspect my engines to abandon their crew and go gallivanting off as they please, the fat director boomed. No, sir, I'm sorry, sir, Thomas said sadly. I just wanted to see what was beyond the yards, sir. The fat director shook his head. I'm sorry, Thomas. If I can't trust you to not leave your crew behind, I cannot trust you outside the yards. The big engine smiled smugly. That will teach you to wander onto my branch line. Thomas felt miserable and was taken back to the station by the inspector. A few days afterwards, he felt very silly and was glad none of the big engines had seen him. They'd surely laugh at me, he wished to himself, as he sat by the signal gantry gazing longingly out towards the main line. Thomas wondered if the fat director would ever trust him again, or if he would ever be allowed to take his own trains. He thought of that bigger engine, the one who could have his very own branch line. I wonder if... He thought longingly, but we all know what happens next, don't we?